I'm Brad Dacus. Welcome to Faith and Law. Recently, I saw on the news how Biden and Trump both achieved the number of delegates that they need to secure their nominations. To me, this is a wake-up call for Christians to take this election very seriously. Irrespective of your politics or your party, Christians need to have their voice heard. Churches need to have their voice heard. And I just want to encourage you to go to our website, contact Pacific Justice Institute, and allow us to help your church have its voice heard by having a voter registration Sunday. This is a great opportunity to get Christians registered to vote and to make sure that their voice and their concern and the love of Christ is evident on Election Day. Now, let's take a look at this trending viral video.
So I am going to spend the next minute screaming, because that is what is going on in here. That is what the trans genocide in this country, in this city, has brought me to.
Oh. Oh, she needs help. How sad.
Imagine that!
I heard her screaming, but you know what that screaming communicated to me? It communicated to me someone that is desperate in their need for Jesus. They need healing. And we see people like this who are advocating transgenderism and distorting the human body different from how God made us to be. What we're really looking at is someone who is hurting, someone who needs the Lord. And I just want to encourage you. At first glance, we're going to get nauseated. We're going to be maybe offended when we see this kind of a video. But you know what we need to do at the end? We need to be praying for these people. And we have the opportunity, we need to be connecting with these people because they need Jesus. And that, I believe, is a true Christian worldview and a Christian response. Well, how are these young people learning about gender confusion and embracing gender confusion? Well, part of it is what they're getting in public schools. Now, this has just become the National Reading Month, and there is legislation that is being pushed that is going to apparently secure and protect this kind of bad messaging impacting young people in such adverse ways as to promote gender confusion. To help talk about this, I'd like to welcome now the Legislative Counsel for Pacific Justice Institute, Attorney Janice Laura. Now, Janice, I understand that there's legislation pending in a state, and it's deceptively called the Freedom to Read legislation. What is it actually trying to accomplish?
Thank you, Brad, for having me on again. It's great to be able to come on and talk about these issues. Recently, we've seen a wave of parents pushing back from the agenda to hypersexualize and exploit children by seeking to remove materials in libraries that are not age appropriate and, quite frankly, are pornographic. In response, the American Library Association has started a national movement to strip power out of the hands of parents and local government officials by trying to push these Freedom to Read acts. So these bills shift decision-making authority away from the local level by requiring libraries to utilize state standards, paving the way for libraries to distribute explicit and obscene materials to minors without liability or input from parents or the public.
Well, have any states successfully cut ties with the American Library Association?
Well, a growing number of states and local libraries are looking to do just that, to break away from the American Library Association, saying that the organization has just become too radical. Lawmakers and decision makers are saying, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and I can't support or let tax dollars go to an organization with such an openly Marxist agenda. And the Montana State Library Commission was the first to successfully vote to leave the American Library Association over the summer. And Georgia, last week, the Georgia Senate just passed a bill which would also cut ties from the ALA in Georgia libraries.
Okay, what is the current state of the law nationally?
Well, opponents of protecting children claim that such material is protected under the First Amendment. Well, that is simply just an oversimplification of the law. The First Amendment does not protect all speech. For example, speech that is defamatory is not protected, and also obscenity is not protected either. With regard to books in school libraries, the controlling case is a 1982 Supreme Court case called Board of Education v. PICO. And the PICO case makes it clear that school boards cannot remove books based on viewpoint or which simply because they dislike the ideas. However, the court was clear that school boards can remove books that are pervasively vulgar or educationally unsuitable. Under the PICO case, school boards also need to have a procedure for handling book removal requests, and they have to follow those procedures. But the key legal standard is pervasively vulgar and educationally unsuitable.
Okay, Janice, why do you feel that reading to our kids or grandkids is so crucial in their development?
Oh, I love this question. All children, no matter what age, can benefit from having caregivers read to them, no matter how small. Babies who are read to score higher in language development skills and cognitive development. Children just through reading, they develop the skills that are they need to be successful in life and in school. To be school ready is very, very important, to step into school ready to learn. And you develop thinking skills, problem solving skills, attention span, creativity, and just a general love of learning. Reading is also a wonderful way just to bond with children, to unplug and to sit down and have quiet time with them. Children get your undivided attention, and you're the most important person in the world to them. So that is just wonderful. Slow down and just enjoy your littles through reading.
Well, Janice, thank you so much for what you're doing to be such an effective influence and watchdog for so many parents and families across America. Keep up the great work. Well, folks, Janice is playing a unique role for the Pacific Justice Institute and serving as a watchdog for you, but not just a watchdog. She's actively engaged in working with state legislators across the country to promote good bills and also to oppose bad bills. And she's not going in alone. With our attorneys all across the country, we're able to testify and support good bills and oppose bad bills with her direction and influence, working directly with the state legislators in their state capitals. So this is an exciting function that Pacific Justice has taken on, not only as a litigator and handling cases all across the country, but also moving upriver and helping legislator pass good bills and oppose bad bills in a very broad scope and a very effective way with the help of Janice Laura. Now, someone else having a positive impact on our country is a gentleman, Rick Green, who heads up the Patriot Academy. Rick, welcome to the program. Now, why is patriotism so important to this country?
Hey, Brett, always good to be with you, brother. Thank you for all that you guys are doing at Pacific Justice. Listen, patriotism, man, I'm telling you, this is what's missing in America. And Ronald Reagan warned us about this. He talked about an informed patriotism. He talked about the fact that we have to not just wave the flag, but know why the American flag is worthy of being waved. Why do we love our country? And, obviously, I call my organization Patriot Academy, so I care about even the definition of patriotism, let alone the importance of it in the country. And you go back to an 1828 Webster's Dictionary, closest to the time of the Founding Fathers, and they understood it to be a love of country and a willingness to defend her values. So if you don't have a love of country, if you buy into the narrative that America's evil and bad and racist and all this stuff and, horrible place to live and we need to destroy it and tear it down, and then you aren't willing to obviously defend the values upon which she was built, then you will be a country no more, or you will be a radically transformed country, which is, of course, what Barack Obama said a week before his election that he was going to do, radically transform the nation. And so I think a hatred of America is necessary to erode the patriotism because we've always been a patriotic nation. Not always, but at our best times in our history, we've been a patriotic country. And that was actually what Ronald Reagan did. Maybe more important than anything else that he did was restore the patriotism, restore the love of America, bring that pride back, bring the nation together instead of dividing us and making us hate each other the way that the leftists and the Marxists do, which is, of course, the opposite of patriotism. Marxism is all about destroying a love of the country, actually making you dependent upon your government rather than supporting your culture and your society. So patriotism is absolutely necessary. We teach in our Constitution classes that Benjamin Rush, one of the three most important founding fathers, we just don't talk about him much. At least the other founding fathers said he was one of the top three. He talked about this amour, this love of country and how it's so important. In fact, he even said it's a little bit sounds weird to us today because we always think God, family, country. He said it's God, country, family, because if you don't have a country and you don't defend your nation, you're not going to be able to raise your family, and that's why we're willing to go off to war for a year or willing to go serve in public office and sacrifice time with our family. All of those things come from a love of country, and without patriotism, we will lose this nation. Lastly, I know that's a long answer. I'm filibustering on you here, Brad, but there's just a necessity that this happens. Otherwise, we will be what Ronald Reagan warned against. He said, we will, if we don't have an informed patriotism and teach this and love of country, then we will be telling our children's children what it was once like to live in America where men were free. We're that close, man. We're that close to having to tell my grandkids what it was once like to live in America where men were free. We've got to restore patriotism.
Rick, which sector of our society, in your opinion, is freedom and truth most at risk?
Man, I don't know how to choose. Listen, I think the left owns every major institution in America. Entertainment, the most of the corporate boards of the Fortune 500, of certainly the entire education sector of our culture, half of the pulpits in America, every major political institution at the federal and state and local level. I've started talking about that a lot more lately. Is that it's not just CRT and ESG and all these things coming in through the education system and state and federal government. Our local governments have become little fiefdoms for Marxists. They now undermine property rights without even blinking, and they're destroying the free market and pursuit of happiness. So, man, I hate to not give you just one area. I think it's literally every area of the culture. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is target rich environment, right? Like just pick which part of the culture you want to engage in and fight back. This is a Winston Churchill moment. We're gonna fight them on the beaches. We're gonna fight them. We're gonna fight them in the air. Fight them on the land. That's how it is. So if you're an arts and entertainment guy or gal, then do like Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was in the entertainment industry, and that's where he fought the Marxist first, and then later fought them in the political realm. If you're an educator, if you're on the front lines of education, you've got to be willing to teach truth and fight the lies. If you're in the political realm, or you're in ministry, or you're in business, or wherever it is, it's everywhere at this point. And of course, our specialty at Patriot Academy is education. We believe that all the bad stuff that's happening is an outgrowth of the petri dish where bad government grows, civic and biblical ignorance. So if we don't know truth, we fall for the lie. And the virus of bad government is everywhere. The virus of Marxism is everywhere. So for us, out of all those areas of the culture and those sectors of the culture, education is where we think it's most important to engage and solve that civic ignorance problem. And that's why we've got 28,000 coaches out there hosting these Constitution classes and getting people to get that informed patriotism.
Now, Rick, why do you feel biblical citizenship is so important in modern America?
I think it is that petri dish. That's why I said civic and biblical ignorance, because it's not just that we don't know our history, which is a huge problem, obviously, but it's also that we just don't know what caused our nation to have a great history. In other words, America became the greatest, most powerful, most free, most benevolent nation in the history of the world because of the inputs. There's always a cause for the effect, and the biblical foundations, the biblical principles of liberty are the cause for the effect of America being the most successful nation in history. And so we have to do biblical citizenship, not just good citizenship. And we have to know what produces good citizenship. There's a reason that there were only a handful of the founding fathers that weren't biblically minded Christians that wanted to live out their worldview. But even those handful that weren't Christians, they loved the fact that most people were Christians, and they said Christians make the best citizens. So they knew that the biblical formula, even if you weren't a person of faith, the truths found there produced a good society. So biblical citizenship in modern America is absolutely essential to restoring a good society. And it really comes down to one simple statement: treat your neighbor the way you want to be treated. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's written down somewhere, maybe in the Bible. Of course, and that's what produces a good society. If everybody's treating their neighbor the way they want to be treated. So when you make a contract with somebody, you want to follow through on that because you want the other guy or gal to follow through on that. When your neighbor's in need or hurting, you want to help meet that need because if you're in that situation, you want them to come alongside you. It just produces the best society. So we have to know what the Bible says about how to be a good citizen, and then we have to know how to do that in our nation under our Constitution. So that's why we call it biblical citizenship in modern America.
Could you share with us a Patriot Academy win where government policy was positively influenced with a biblical worldview?
Oh man, let me try to think of a specific. I'd say first, generally speaking, probably my favorite is when I hear from an alum of Patriot Academy, and I can think of two specific instances on this, but it happens all the time. One was a member of Congress that had come through Patriot Academy. Another was a young legislator in a state that just got in last year and was voted the number one conservative, by the way, after had the number one conservative record after his first session. But in both of those instances, I received phone calls multiple times where they said, okay, I'm trying to think through this bill. I've got this policy or this issue, and I'm trying to figure out, the right where to land on this thing. And I want to go through the right questions. And I said, okay, so what's your paradigm? What are the questions you're asking yourself? And both of them said, well, my first question is, do I have authority to consider this issue? And I have to admit, Brad, I literally teared up because that's what we teach at Patriot Academy, the LIFT principles: limited government, individual liberties, free enterprise, timeless truth. So limited government requires us every time as a legislator, you have a policy that's put in front of you to ask the question, not is it a good policy, not will this solve the problem. That's not the first question. You get to those if you get past the first question. The first question is this in my domain? Do I have authority to consider this issue? So for instance, when the congressman called, he's like, this is an education deal. I know the Department of Education is unconstitutional. The Constitution does not give the federal government any power over education. And so he's asking the right question. So I go through that long answer for you because even more than a specific policy, it's the mindset. It's the fact that we're raising up a generation of leaders that are coming back to the fundamental question of what's the proper role of government, because God gave the government certain jurisdiction, the family certain jurisdiction, the church certain jurisdiction, and even in the government sphere, we set up as the people, which the Declaration says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So we set up governments to have the feds do certain things, but it's few. It's enumerated. It's only those 17. And then the states and the people have everything else. And so getting our graduates to just think through, is this in my domain? That's a general win, but it's the most important win because then you can get government out of our lives on the areas that they're not supposed to be, and then get to those specific wins. I could go through a lot of, man, we've seen a lot of pro-life victories, a lot of victories in the judicial realm from our graduates actually applying that. And then specifically also, man, I could give you 3 or 4 school boards where we completely took over because of Patriot Academy grads that had gone through Constitution classes, going in and getting their church engaged and taking over those school boards. And now hundreds of school board members that have been elected because they came through a Patriot Academy class, dozens of members of Congress and state legislatures out there. So anyway, that's more of a general answer to your question, but I hope it encourages you, Brad, and encourages your viewers to know that you can make a difference. It's easy to do. We give away these classes for free, so anybody can sign up to take a Constitution class for free or be a coach for free, and you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be as smart as Brad Dacus to be a Constitution coach. You don't have to know anything about the law or history or government. You just got to know how to do the power play. Get people in the room, turn on the power, hit play, and let David Barton and Kirk Cameron and myself and others do the teaching. So please, folks, get out there and be engaged. Brad, thanks for what you're doing, man. I'll lock shields with you anytime.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for the work that you're doing to help have a positive influence for people to understand the Constitution and our biblical worldview and how we can influence society. Folks, if you want to help your church directly have a positive influence, Patriot Academy is a great tool. I strongly encourage you to encourage your church to take a look at this. It's very equipping for the body of Christ. Something else I encourage you to take a look at is also our Church Finds Its Voice campaign that we're participating in at Pacific Justice Institute. What we're trying to do is to empower churches to have their voice heard in a number of ways, by encouraging people to run for office, by encouraging people to become poll workers or poll watchers to fight voter fraud, but also, and more fundamentally, is simply to get people registered to vote. It's not a hard thing to do. It's legal. Churches can have a voter registration Sunday where people can have a table in the back of their church where they can register to vote. It's constitutional, it's legal, and we at PJI are here to help you do it and to follow through. Do you know the last election, we were able, through our C4 organization, we were able to get over 500 churches to have voter registration Sundays. That's right, over 500. This election, we're hoping to help over 1,000 churches to implement voter registration Sundays. If you want to do this for your church, and it won't happen overnight if someone doesn't do anything, you need to be involved to help your pastor and your church do this, and we will work with you. Just go to our website, pji.org. Click churches, and you'll find information about our church engagement office and the Church Finds Its Voice campaign and what we're doing, and help churches register their voters to make sure their voice is heard.
Well, they're in the trenches and they're fighting, and PGI is on the front lines for the battle for freedom and liberty. They've been doing so much to equip pastors across the country and to really fight for the values that have made this country so great. Honored to be supportive of PGI.
We're living in a time when Christians are constantly under assault for their beliefs in the marketplace. And if there's not someone to advocate for them and help them with the legal necessities of defending themselves, they're going to get fired. They have no recourse. Most people don't have the resources to go hire a lawyer. It would deplete everything they own. And most lawyers, quite frankly, across the country don't deal in religious liberty issues.
Well, we're living in some very difficult days in America where basic freedoms and especially religious liberty is under attack. And that's one of the reasons why Pacific Justice Institute is so vitally important to the future of this nation. What a great group of lawyers, first-class, top-rate lawyers who are willing to stand up for freedom and stand up for our American citizens under attack.
Yeah, they can support, they can follow, they can pray. We need more organizations like PJI, and I could tell you that being in the front lines, there's not enough people that are actually in the trenches doing the difficult but tough work, and that's exactly why this organization is so critical.
One of the most incredible things about Pacific Justice Institute is that they do pro bono work. And what does that mean? Well, it means the rest of us have a responsibility. We've got to stand up and provide financial incentives and financial opportunities for these attorneys to get out there and do the fighting. And that's one of the reasons why we have Pacific Justice Institute attorneys on my national radio show, because we want to let people know, hey, there's a need here. These folks are doing very important work, and they're doing very important, successful work as well. And that's why they need our support.
When a Christian is targeted for his or her beliefs, it affects every believer in America. This idea that, well, it didn't happen to me, well, you're next. And when Pacific Justice Institute takes on a case, it's not just that one individual that they really are representing, because a legal precedent may be established from that will protect 1 million believers who could be in the same position for the exact same issue.
So we want to have a difference in our nation. Well, why? Well, let's take a look at some scripture. It says in Psalm 22:30, a posterity shall serve him, or a generation shall serve him. It will be recounted to the Lord to the next generation. What does it mean? It means what we do now with this generation will impact, for good or for evil, the next generation. And why is that important? Because that influence is going to influence not just our nation, folks, it's going to influence our children. It's going to influence our grandchildren. So we need to speak up. We need to be faithful with the opportunity we have now to have the church's voice heard and to be a proclaimer of God's truth and God's love, and most importantly, of course, the gospel. Without the gospel, there is no transformation. There is no revival. And so let's always remember as we face these challenges to be faithful with the truth that God's given us. And the most basic and most fundamental, most life-changing truth of all is the gospel. Psalm 33:12. It says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. When a nation turns to the Lord, it's blessed. When a nation turns away from the Lord, it's not blessed. And there's all kinds of support for this all throughout the scriptures, where the nation of Israel was blessed when it followed the Lord, and then when it decided to turn from the Lord, it faced heavy ramifications, heavy consequences. I don't know about you, but I'm concerned for this nation, spiritually, for the salvation of people, but also for the fact that we're begging right now because of policies and things that are being pushed in our schools, things that are being pushed on our children, our new generation. I'm really concerned that we're going to have pushed on our nation consequences that all of us are going to dread. And it's going to be a reminder to us all of what happens when we turn from the Lord. Let's turn back to the Lord. Let's share our faith. Let's live our faith. Folks, the consequences are simply too high. We're going to face persecution as Christians. But no matter what we face, no matter what the pushback, always keep the faith.